What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Alex. Shout out to the Elite Fleet. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can become a member of the Elite Fleet. And one of my subscribers said, you seem to have a vast of knowledge. I was wondering what some of your favorite books were, or what some books you would recommend. And I love questions like that. First of all, that's one of the many reasons I call you guys the Elite Fleet. I don't care what anybody says. This channel has the most balanced subscribers on YouTube. We don't hate men, we don't hate women, we talk what's real, everybody's smart, everybody has some type of a spiritual base. We can agree to disagree, we don't fight in the comments. I love it. But one of the reasons I love you guys, besides everything else I just said, is because you guys think. You guys are thinkers. You guys, or you add layers onto my opinions. You guys want to know. You guys really seek out the information. And so I appreciate a comment like that. And I'm glad to make that video because we mainly talk about relationships and we mainly talk about dating, right, and the dynamics between men and women. But we also talk about fitness. We also talk about working out. We also talk about what to invest in. We also talk about how to build a business, going to trade school, going to college, making sure that you have a spiritual base, making sure that you're mentally strong, emotionally balanced. All these things are ultimately connected to a relationship anyway, because you're not emotionally balanced, you're not mentally sound, and you're not spiritually connected, your relationship's going to fail regardless. So with that being said, I appreciate you asking me that. I have no problem giving you guys some tips. So I'm going to go through some of my favorite books. I might have to make a two-part of this, but just off the top of my head, I'm going to go through some of my favorite books. Now, because I'm gone so much, as you guys know, I usually wake up like 5, 6 a.m. Sometimes I don't get back to like 9, 10 o'clock. I don't always buy every single book. Some of these books I listen to as audio versions, but I've read them all or listened to them all thoroughly, and these are books I recommend for you guys to at least get started or at least look into. I think they can help you out a lot. They're going to cross a bunch of different genres, okay? So we're going to talk about like spiritual books, we're going to talk about self-help books, we're going to talk about business books, we're going to talk about math books, reading, but we're going to talk about a lot of different books with a lot of different information. I'll probably give you guys like a favorite quote of mine from the book, so that way you got a decent understanding of what the book's about, and then from there you can decide if you want to go forward reading it or not. So I'm going to start off with a business book, one of my favorite business books that I don't hear talked about much on the internet, and that's this book right here. How I came across this book was I was a big time Nipsey Hussle fan. I actually went to one of his few concerts he had before he passed away. He was down around the DMV area. I went to see him at a festival, literally probably like a couple of months before he passed away. And when he died, I was like, man, I would have really loved to pick Nipsey's brain and see how he built his brand. I love the way that he built his brand, coming straight from the streets, telling $100 mixtapes. So I was like, what did this dude read? Like, what was he into? I ran into the fact that one of his favorite books was the 17 Irrefutable Laws of Marketing. So I was like, let me read that book and see what it's about. And it is a fantastic book. It basically breaks down how to build your brand, okay, how to build brand recognition, how to build a brand name, how to get your business jump started off the ground. In my opinion, the main reason 80 to 90% of businesses fail within their first 2 years is because they don't know how to build a foundation for themselves and a client base, a brand around themselves to attract people to their business. This book is all about that. One of my favorite quotes from this book is the law of being first. I remember I used to argue with one of my friends all the time. Not argue, but just debate with him. I'd be like, DC and Marvel is basically the same thing. I've always been a little bit more of a DC fan. I think DC tells better stories. I used to say to him, why is it that everybody seems like they want the DCEU to fail? Why does it seem like everybody's mad that DC's making a universe when ultimately DC was the first one to make movies and there really would be no MCU if it wasn't for the DC? So I read this book and I immediately understood it. It's because the MCU came out first. Because the MCU came out first, any cinematic universe made after that is always going to go back to the MCU. So when people see DCEU, they just think MCU, oh, it's a copy. Even when Legendary tried to do the Monsterverse, people just looked at that as like, oh, that's a copy of MCU. And it stretches out to further things, guys. Y'all ever realize whenever you got a smartphone, a lot of times people will call it an iPhone, and it's not an iPhone, it's a smartphone, because Apple really ran with that brand first. And then you can look at something like Uber and Lyft. People, you'll get in a Lyft, somebody say your Uber's outside, or somebody say I'm in an Uber. They're in a Lyft because Uber came out first. Uber built that brand recognition. So whenever you're ride sharing, people think Uber. For the most part, when people think smartphones, they think Apple. When people think cinematic universe, they think MCU. That's just one of the many gems that book has. That is a great book. I think you guys should check that one out. All right, guys, this is number one of my favorite books, The Tao of Physics. This one basically breaks down how everything in physics has a spiritual connection to it, and everything in spirituality has a physics connect to it. For you guys who've been subscribed for a while, you know I'm big on spirituality. This is one of the best books out. Is a deep dive on how spirituality and religion really isn't that far apart from physics and science, because everybody always argues religion versus science. This book pulls them both together. It's a fantastic read. I might be misquoting this a little bit because I'm just going off the top of my head, but there's a quote in the book that says, deep ecological understanding and spiritual awareness is essentially the same, because you can't have deep ecological understanding without being spiritually aware. I might be misquoting that somewhat, but that's generally what that book is about. It's a pretty great breakdown what that book is about. They talk about time and space. They talk about how, the universe is connected, how the world works. Like, there's so many deep, like, if I have to go through these chapters, for example, man, there's so many deep chapters in this book. You've got beyond the world of opposites, space and time, the dynamic universe, emptiness and form, the cosmic dance. There's so many layers to that book. Fantastic book. I suggest you guys all pick that book up as well, okay? Another book that I highly suggest you guys read is this book right here. This one gets talked about a lot, but it can't be talked about enough because it's a fantastic read, and that's Outwitting the Devil. What does Outwitting the Devil not talk about? This book talks about finding your purpose and finding your high selves, how to put yourself in a position to fulfill whatever it is your purpose is. It talks about outwitting the devil. It talks about semen retention and spiritual alignment and not being controlled by your lust. It talks about so much stuff. It's one of the best books I ever read because it's almost like an interview with the devil, essentially. And one of my favorite takeaways from the book was, it talks about, like, you guys know how those old quotes they used to say you have like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. This book basically breaks down your fight to that. Like, I like the quote, you look in the mirror, that's your only opponent, right? Your biggest opponent is yourself. That's what this book is ultimately about. It's basically saying the devil is in your head. The devil is your negative thought form. The devil is a negative thought form. It's a negative thought pattern. So if you can learn to defeat that negative thought pattern, stay in your positive energy, okay? Like I said, get in your purpose, find your higher self, put yourself in the position to do what you want to do without letting fear hold you back, without being scared or intimidated by your own dreams and ambitions and goals, you can pretty much conquer the world. The book is absolutely amazing, and they tell it, like I said, in a story format and an interview format, so it keeps you engaged because it's also interesting. There's a few jokes in there. It's a fantastic book. That's Outwitting the Devil. I highly suggest that you guys pick that one up as well. Now this one right here, Quadrivium, you guys should read this one. This is a straight up knowledge book, okay? Because it talks about the 4 classical liberal arts of number, geometry, music, and cosmetology. This is a straight knowledge book. This is a nerd book. This is a geek book. This is the type of book where if you read this thoroughly, you can homeschool your kids. This is the type of book where if you read this thoroughly, you just start talking like Einstein and dropping bombs on people's head. But it's a fantastic book. You get so much information about this. Again, space and time, numerology, a lot of good information in that book right there. You guys should check it out. Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich is another good book. Think and Grow Rich has a hidden secret in it that they try to hint at throughout the book that they want you to be able to find out so that you can find success later on in life. Now, let me say this. I'm not going to tell you what that secret is, but Think and Grow Rich, that was by Napoleon Hill as well. He's also the one who wrote Outwitting the Devil. I said outgrowing. He's also the one who wrote Outwitting the Devil. So Think and Grow Rich is another really good motivational self-help book. I think you guys should pick that one out and check it out as well. The World's Greatest Salesman, another great book. Fantastic read. Nice little plot twist to it at the end, okay? Now I'm going back on my spiritual and religious talk. This is a great book. This is a great book, okay? This book, Rainbow Body and Resurrection, especially if you're into spirituality, That book tells you how to attain the light body and how to get all the negative energy out of yourself, out of your soul, so that you can reach the next dimension, you can reach the next level in the afterlife, so that you don't go to hell or you don't come back and have to do another turn in this globe. Okay, really deep book, really interesting read. You guys should read that. Also, you guys should just be reading about your spirituality and religion in general. Okay, I also own a copy of the Holy Bible. I also own a copy of the Torah. I also own a copy of the Quran. Now, those are all in the basement. I'm not going all the way down to the basement to get them, but those are all really good books too. You guys should read those as well. Another book you can't really go wrong with is the 48 Laws of Power. Now, this one's kind of oversaturated to me. Everyone always talks about it, but the 48 Laws of Power is still a good book. I look at it more as a life lesson book. You're not going to read this book and become CEO. You're not going to read this book and become team captain. You're not going to read this book and just take over the world, right? But it does give really good life lessons. I do think it's a great read, and everyone should read this book at some point. I read it way back in college. My two favorite laws from the book is avoid the unhappy, the miserable, and the unfortunate, because I mean that's just a great life rule in general, but it especially applies to relationships. Avoid the unlucky, the miserable, and the unhappy all the time. And my second favorite rule is to crush your enemies. Absolutely. You know I don't believe in making enemies. I believe everybody should try to avoid that at all times and seek positive energy without positive energy. But unfortunately, we live in a negative world that's kind of more demonic and about the devil, demon time as they call it, than it really is positive and about spirituality. So it's important that if you're going to make an enemy, if you're going to have conflict, you crush them completely. You don't leave them any angle or any way to get back at you. But there's a whole bunch of other good rules in that book. You should definitely read that book. Now, a Robert Greene book that I like better is The Artist Seduction. Now, if y'all know anything about me, I don't like game, I don't like manipulation. I think manipulation is demonic. But if you actually read The Artist Seduction, you'll realize it's more about telling you about seduction styles and different methods people use. And your personal seduction style actually breaks down based upon your personality and your tactics, which style is actually your style. And at that point, you can kind of discover some more about yourself. The book is actually a lot more self-reflective than it really is a game book. And people who didn't read it, I don't think they really realized that. Like, for example, I read that book and I realized that my ex was a coquette. Once I realized that there were several things she would do and several things about her personality that didn't necessarily bother me as much, because I realized that's just her way of being herself, being flirty. That's her way of getting her attention. Another good gem that y'all can take away from this book, y'all gotta read this book. Like, for example, a lot of people will say a lot of people thought Kevin Samuels was gay. A lot of people thought Kevin Samuels was sweet. No, Kevin Samuels is really just a dandy. If you read the book, it goes into further depth, but essentially all a dandy really is a metrosexual. It's a guy who knows how to dress in a way, talk in a way, tap into that feminine energy so that he can relate more to women. And then there's also a lot of you guys call hoes, thoughts, and all that masculine women. That's true. A lot of hoes and thoughts are dandies as well. They know how to tap into that masculine energy and get cool with guys, and that's their way of seducing you. They know about sports. They play the video games. They know about animes and all this other extra stuff. They know how to get in there and relate to you on a different level, and that's their way of seducing. So there's a lot of gems in that book that don't really have anything to do, like I said, about game or manipulation or anything. It's more about self-reflecting and understanding your personal seduction style. So that's a real good book. I think you guys should read that as well. I think I'm gonna wrap up on this one. Why Men Are the Way They Are. This was a book that was recommended to me recently. It's a fantastic read. If you guys go back in my archives, you'll see a video I did a long time ago where I talked about how Kevin Samuels was still married and lie, and why high value men cheat. And I'm actually going to do another video about that based upon after reading this book, because when I read the book, Why Men Are the Way They Are, I understood. I'm like, yo, everything that I was saying is actually broken down scientifically in this book. This book has a lot of great information in it. It also has a lot of good information for women too, because it talks about the genetic celebrity and how women are propped up to believe that they need to look a certain way, or men are programmed to believe they need a woman who looks a certain way. But it also breaks down different styles of men. Like, I'll give you guys one gem. I'm giving you the short version of this, but just some of the stuff that you can find in this book. 90% of your favorite red pill, MGTOW talking points come from this book. They talk about 3 different ways that men use a lot of the times to try to attract women or get women, right? They talk about short term. Short term would be things like being an athlete. Unless you go pro, most people don't go pro. You'll get the girls in high school. You'll get get the girls in college, but eventually that's going to slow down for you, right? Things like being a class clown or having clout or popularity. Again, unless you go on to be a celebrity or something like that, you'll get them young, but eventually it's going to fizzle out for you. Then they talk about the long term. The long term strategy, it'll keep women coming in longer, but it takes you longer to get to it. So the long term strategy is like going to college and getting a degree so you can get a good job, or going to trade school, getting a trade so you can get a good job. Things of that nature. It takes you longer to get to the point where you'll get the attraction, but the attraction lasts longer. And then it talks about the desperate route, which has things like trying to be the bad boy or the hustler or the game banger, whatever the case is, and exalt ultimate masculinity and using that to try to get women as well. So it's a very, very, very good read. Like I said, I'm trying to give you guys a few gems for every book so you can get a little bit of a beat on what the book's about, the type of information that it offers, so you can make the decision for yourself rather than not something you want to read. I know for a fact I'm reading some books out. I know for a fact, I said reading. I know for a fact I'm leaving some books out, but this is just going off the top of my head. So I'll do a part 2 to this. I'll do a part 2 to this at some point because I know for a fact I'm leaving some books out. But those are some good places to get started. All different types of books, all have different type of information in it. I don't believe in slamming on one genre type. Just reading self-help and motivation books alone ain't going to do it. Just reading business books alone ain't going to do it. Just reading spiritual books alone ain't going to do it. I believe to find balance, you have to combine all three. Spiritually right, financially right, and self-help and motivation, how to get yourself started. If you can combine all three of those, you'll be an unstoppable force. And all that, of course, translates into relationships because most things are interconnected. As the Tower of Physics tells you, you can't have ecology and understand properly ecology if you don't understand spirituality. You can't understand relationships properly if you don't understand business, if you don't understand the mental aspects, the emotional aspects. Everything's all connected. So check those books out. Like I said, I'll end up doing a part 2 to this because I know for a fact I'm missing out some books, but I'm just going off the top of my head, so I can't remember them. I didn't make a list. But anyways, check those out. I am Alex, and I'm out. Peace.